The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. How Bock show. Simple as that. Talking ball from the old garden at Nedick's on 49th Street. How we're not talking basketball. We're not talking hockey tonight. We've got David Hubler, George Case, Marty Rose, Al Blumkin, and myself to talk the good old New York Mets. And you wrote a column about that this week. And I'll ask you, Hal, what's the score?
Well, I'll tell you, the score this week is the travails of the New York Mets. It seems like this team can't get out of its own way. They lost a game the other night on a bases-loaded walk, forcing in the winning run. Then they lost a game last night on a two-run pinch-hit home run in the bottom of the ninth inning. They played until 1 o'clock in the morning and managed to get a win in the second game of a doubleheader last night. It was rain delayed by a couple of hours. And it's just one thing after another. Today they announced that Noah Syndergaard is going on the disabled list to join a fistful of other players. And it's funny because last year injuries plagued this team to the point where they changed their entire medical staff. They fired the trainer, Ray Ramirez. They got a whole new medical staff in there. And they're still getting hurt left and right. So my hypothesis, and you tell me what you think, I think they're cursed. I really do. I think there's a bad omen hanging over this team. And that's where I am.
I think it has something to do with Mrs. Metz, the wife of the mascot.
You think so?
I think.
Could be.
She's an ugly woman.
It happens to do with with Jeff
Well,
Wilpon.
he's not a handsome dude, you know.
Yeah.
I know, but, he's got power and money. So
it's the curse of Shea Stadium. They never should have left Shea Stadium.
Yeah. You know, David,
they never, if you want to look at it that way, they may never have left the Polo Grounds. And,
well, that's true, too.
Polo Grounds was a dilapidated joint. But Shea Stadium, they moved into Shea Stadium. That was their ancestral home. And the owner of the team decided that he had to rebuild Ebbets Field, and a new ballpark in the image of Ebbets Field.
Yeah.
So we have the Rotunda, which was the famous spot in Ebbets Field, and we have a team that mirrors the Dodgers, who were an excruciating team for their fans. Not for me, I rooted for the Giants, but they drove fans crazy, especially in my favorite baseball year, 1951, when they lost the playoff to the Giants. He's got his Dodgers right back where he wants them.
The Mets did not leave the Polo Grounds. The Polo Grounds left the Mets.
Right.
Well, you could say that. I had a funny experience.
You're talking to two guys that were at opening day in 1964 and at Shea Stadium. Both of us.
Well, I beat you by 2 years. I was at the very first Mets game at the Polo Grounds.
Oh,
I've got to
really?
tell you a funny story, fellas. I've got to tell you a funny story. I was doing a story some years ago about bowl games, and there was a bowl game that was played at the Polo Grounds. I don't remember. Maybe the Gotham Bowl? That's the name of it, I think.
They got about 5,000 people who show up for that.
Exactly.
Maybe.
And I called up. You're ruining my line, Alan. You really ruined my line.
Okay.
I called up Jim Turner, who was the place kicker for the Colorado State or Colorado team that played in that game. Later, he kicked for the Jets. Jim Turner, nice fellow, nice guy. And I asked him about playing in the Polo Grounds in that game. And he said to me, one of the greatest quotes I ever got. He said, "There were more pigeons than people." I thought that was a great line.
But the layout of the Polo Grounds was more conducive to football than Yankee Stadium was. Because it was long, elongated.
Giants moved out of there after 1955. They moved to Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, and the Tyko played there for 2
Football
years
Giants,
before they went to Shea Stadium.
Yeah.
So,
let me just ask you one thing. My understanding, and I'm not in New York, but there's nothing left of the Polo Grounds other than the staircase or something that came down.
Correct.
Is that right, Alan?
Yeah.
Yes, that
There's
is
a plaque. There's
There's
a plaque
there, and a plaque is there.
And
Okay.
isn't there a housing project they built right on top?
There is a housing
Yeah.
project. We went back there
When I worked at the
years
Associated
ago.
Press, when I worked at the AP, there was a delivery guy who would come by. I guess he came by with newspapers or something or other. And he would say to us, you know, I live in the project where the Polo Grounds is. I live on second base. Okay?
They built a housing project on Ebbets Field, the old site of Ebbets Field, too.
Yeah, they've got a plaque or something, don't they,
Yeah.
Alan? Which
Yeah.
says, at one time this was, and they call it, don't they call it Ebbets Field
Houses,
something or
yeah.
other?
Yeah.
When you look at those great stadiums in New York, I mean, to me, being an old-time baseball fan, you've got the Polo Grounds, you've got Ebbets Field, and you have Yankee Stadium, and they're all gone.
Yeah, the original, yeah. When I first got into the new Yankee Stadium, somebody asked me what I thought of it. I said, the old one was a shrine. This is just another ballpark.
Right.
Well,
It's more than just that. It's a
right?
gaudy
Yeah.
edifice. It's real. I mean, it's huge. It's just it's too big on the inside and too small on the outfield.
Yeah.
And to me, there's no history there. There's no history where the original Yankee Stadium. I mean, the house that Ruth built. You had all the great history of the Yankees with DiMaggio, Gehrig, Ruth, Mantle, Maris, all that. And your new Yankee Stadium. I mean, it was built by Steinbrenner and his minions. And the fact is that they can call it whatever they want, but it does not, in my mind, it does not replace Yankee Stadium.
No.
There weren't enough luxury boxes there.
I remember one time being in the old Yankee Stadium, working in the old Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees had a young outfielder. I think it was Rusty Torres, and he was in right field on a particular game one day, and I came to him in the clubhouse after the game to talk to him about whatever, and he had his eyes were twinkling, and I said, "What's up?" And he said, "You know what? I just played right field in Yankee Stadium where Babe Ruth played," and he was so overwhelmed by that idea. Well, that's gone. That's all gone, and apparently they don't care one way or the other,
Well, I don't think they do, Alan. I mean, David and Ronnie and Hal, because, I've talked to people, and I happened to go to a ball game at Yankee Stadium a couple of years ago, and I was not happy to be there. I got down and I went into the museum or whatever they call it, and they have a guide, and he's taking them all around, and so they have a big picture of Lou Gehrig and his luckiest man speech. And I said to the young man, I said, "Do you know who those players are?" "No, I have no idea." I had to tell him who they were. And he hadn't heard, he didn't know who Bill Dickey, and he didn't know Red Rolfe, and he didn't know all those great Yankee players. I mean, he knew Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, but that was the extent of his knowledge.
That's a crime. Anybody that's hired for that kind of job should have some kind of background or get a couple of weeks tutorial.
No, I agree, David. I was with my cousin. She said, "Why don't you tell the Yankees that you'll take their job over there as a tour guide?" I said, "Well, that's not what I do, but it does bother me when here you've got somebody that's dealing with the public and he doesn't even know what the classic picture of Lou Gehrig is. He doesn't know who the players are."
Well, I met Tony Moranti.
When I talk to young people, and I mention a name of a legendary player like Lou Gehrig or Babe Ruth, and they'd say, "Well, I don't know him. I never saw him play. Who was he?" I said, "Did you ever hear of Abraham Lincoln? I know he was before your time also, but you heard of him, right?"
Well, I remember talking to a young kid when I was working in Washington years ago, and he was a big basketball fan and a big kid, and he was a fairly good player from what I understand. And I mentioned the name Bob Pettit, and he said, "Who? Who's that?"
There was one time I brought a friend of mine up to Yankee Stadium for a tour. I arranged it with Tony Moranti. I don't know if you know him. He's the one of the tour guide up there, the head of it. And he's taking me and this other guy around. This is the old stadium. A year or two before it closed, and he's taking me out and with all the retired numbers and everything. He says to me, because Tony had met me a few times before, he said, I started spouting some stuff out, and he said, you could do this tour and, by yourself, you don't need me. But,
well, I agree with you, Alan. Hey, look, we're all older, and but it is history, and it is history, and you should know the history of baseball, just like you should know the history of your own country. I mean, I've talked to people, and I love history. I've talked to people about the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. They look at you like you're from Mars. They have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And to me, that's sad if you don't know the history of your own country. And you don't have to be a baseball fan, but for heaven's sakes, if you're associated at all with the game, you should know who Babe Ruth and who Lou Gehrig was and what they meant, just like you should know about Jackie Robinson. I mean,
I went ballistic over all the coverage of the royal wedding. I mean, it got to the point that I just couldn't stand it anymore.
No, I know.
And somebody says, well, I said, if I remember my history correctly, we fought a Revolutionary War about 240 years ago to get rid of them. But there's such an obsession with this. I mean, it just drove me out of my mind. It was driving me out of my mind.
I liked it.
You can always turn it off. You can always turn off the...
Yeah, you can always... I liked it a lot.
I did, yeah.
Well...
David,
we got away from baseball. And we're talking about the royal wedding, but as far as I'm concerned, I would like to have Hal and talk. This whole thing with like free agency and what was going on with the Mets. I mean, it's a little bit beyond my comprehension. The amount of money that they're talking about, and I know that I was looking back, and I guess a couple of years ago, Batista, he was making like $15 or $18 million a year. And so now nobody wants him. So the Mets sign him for what, $565,000 minimum or something like that. I mean, I don't understand.
The team that cuts him initially, he was released by somebody early in Toronto, Batista, and whoever picks him up only has to pay. If he's owed, they only have to pay the team that signs him only has to pay him a minimum. Atlanta, who signed Batista, didn't even think he was worth that much.
Right.
So they cut him, and the Toronto pays, from what I understand, Toronto pays everything but the minimum salary to these types.
Explain this to me. I want you guys to explain this to me.
Okay, the team that signed...
Wait. Go ahead, Hal.
There's a player who's now back on the Giants named Pedro Sandoval. The Red Sox signed him 2 years ago for 5 years, $95 million, even though, his numbers were not the kind that produces much in a place like Fenway. They released him last year. They had decided to eat the $65 million, $70 million, or whatever it was. And when the Giants picked him up, got him back later in the season, they still had to pay. The Red Sox paid him, I think, $18.5 million. The Giants were on the hook for the other $500,000.
That's fine.
That
now,
was a pretty good pickup. He's giving them a spark.
Yeah.
I need you guys to explain something to me. It's very important to me. The Mets signed Jose Batista because they were a little short in the outfield. They had all their outfielders were hurt. They had three outfielders, all of them left-handed hitters. Okay? They had Jay Bruce is a left-handed hitter. They had Michael Conforto, who's a left-handed hitter, and they had the kid, Brandon Nimmo. He's a left-handed hitter. They had no other outfielders at this point. Now, Batista's out there, and eventually they signed him. But before they went for Batista, they made two other roster moves involving the catcher and a pitcher, borderline players. Now, what were they waiting for? I mean, what if one of these outfielders came up lame, the way Juan Lagares did? He ran into the wall and he tore up his toe. Well, what then? Who was going to play the outfield? Jose Reyes? What were they waiting for? Now they signed.
Well, they had Flores to go out there until he got hurt.
Yeah, I saw Daniel Murphy play left field, and it was pretty ugly. You don't want Flores out there. You don't want Reyes out there. They had to go get an outfielder then and there, and they didn't. It just amazes me, the things that they do.
Basically, I think it's the Wilpines, because it comes from the top down. I don't know if Marty agrees with me with that, but it's like the Knicks. I mean, they've had the worst record in the NBA since Dolan started winning.
Alan, do you really believe that the Wilpons know one outfielder from another?
No, but they've lost a lot of money on to Madoff.
So what?
So what? They're reluctant to spend money unless a gun is put at their head. So they got Batista on the cheap for $500,000, and he stinks, and nobody leaves him.
Listen, if you don't want to have a baseball team, make it a parking lot. We'll make a lot more money.
Well,
I mean, that's up to them. If you're going to have a baseball team, you want to have it compete, and they don't compete.
Some of these teams, like in Pittsburgh, which I see every day from my friends in Pirate Chat, they think the only thing the owners care about is the money. Making money.
I think all the owners care about the money. I don't think
but
there's any
some of them more than others.
They're not in it to lose money.
No, some of them more than others.
Very well. You don't have to make a benefit for these people.
I know that, yeah. But for some of them, it's not enough.
You want to compete? If you're going to play ball, you might as well compete. But they don't compete. Another thing with this franchise, if they're playing a game and the other team scores 4 runs in the first 2 innings, they might as well go home. They don't come from behind. They don't have that kind of spirit about them that makes them bounce back. They're just beaten. They're beaten as soon as they fall behind. That's trouble with me.
How the same thing is true in the American League with the Orioles. They sat on their hands over the winter. They didn't make any kind of moves worth anything during the free agency and during the signing period. And where are they? They're 18 games out off the pace in last place, and they lost the last couple of games. They're losing again tonight, I understand, playing the Nats. I mean, that's a team that mirrors just what the Mets have done. They're going to lose Machado any week now. They'll lose him. They may even lose Adam Jones, and they'll have nobody. The pitching staff is from hunger.
There's 5 teams now on the pace to lose over 100 games this year. The Orioles, the White Sox, the Royals, the Marlins, and the Reds are all on pace to lose over 100 games this year.
My wife was having her hair done today, and I was in the beauty parlor waiting for her, and I had a newspaper. Now, ordinarily, I do not look at the box scores or the standings, certainly not in the month of May. It's a little early, right? Today, I looked at the standings, and as badly as they've played and as aggravating as they've been, the Mets are only 5 games out of first place in the National League East. 5 games is nothing.
No.
5 games, you make that
but they're like 11-24 after that great start. That they
I know. They had an 11-1 start.
Yeah.
And like, everything was peaches and cream, and they just, I don't know. I just don't understand. That's one of the reasons I'll never understand baseball. It's a mystery to me, this game.
That's why it's so good.
This is another one. He's
That's
another
why
one
it's
that
so
aggravates
good.
me.
Nobody can figure
He's on the disabled list with a hip flexor. Well, that's his annual trip to the disabled list. Does he ever play 150 games? Never. He's always hurt. Now, he's a hell of a player, and he can carry a team for a week or 2 weeks, but it just seems to me that he has a little bit of dog in him, and he doesn't worry about getting back as quickly as he can. That's a problem for me. If you're hurt, play a little hurt. But
you know what, Hal, I want to ask you something. In the old days, the players I say old days, but in previous years, players would play hurt. But I wonder now if the agents are telling them, "Hey, look, don't play because it's going to hurt you in the pocketbook."
Well, I'm sure you're right,
You're
George.
negotiating. To me, they're making so much money that it's a little bit easier for them to say, "Hey, I'm listening to the agent. The agent tells me not to play, so I'm not going to play I'll go into DL for 10 days or 15 days or whatever it is."
Yeah, well, I think part of it is the ownership too. They don't want to lose their investment, by an incident or an accident that gets extended because the players did not go on the DL.
Here's another.
David, you're right, David. I mean, they're multimillionaires out there, and the owners are billionaires, and they got to protect their investment, and that's
exactly right.
Another example for you. It's been 2 years since David Wright played a Major League Baseball game. Well, You think it's time for him to retire? Because he obviously can't play anymore. He's hurt. But he refuses to retire. He continues to draw a very large salary because he signed a huge contract a year or so before he got hurt. And they have insurance on the contract, so they're collecting money back. But it's foolish. He's taking up a place on the 40-man roster.
I was just going to ask you, what's his status? He is on the 40-man roster then, huh?
I think so, yeah. I think so.
He has spinal stenosis. I have spinal stenosis. You can't play Major League Baseball with spinal stenosis.
He was diagnosed.
Well, most of us couldn't play baseball even if we didn't have spinal stenosis.
I know, yeah.
Day after he was diagnosed with spinal stenosis, I had dinner with a doctor friend of mine. And I said to him, Doc, can a ball player come back and play with spinal stenosis? And he looked at me and laughed. He said, no, of course not. So we knew that 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
He wasn't going to be able to play. Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
How old is David Wright, Hal?
Oh, he's 33 maybe, 34.
Okay.
35.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's at that age where those kind of injuries, I mean, they normally say, hey, that's it. But they're making so much money, so he's still getting paid whether or not he's playing or not.
Yeah, he is. Of course he is. But take a reality pill and recognize that it's all over. It's done. It's finished. Goodbye, Charlie.
There are also a number of players out there that are making so much money that they feel no need to improve. So they're paying me $8 million, and the Orioles, David, have a pitcher that they signed in the offseason named Andrew Kashner, who has been terrible. He's terrible his whole career. Right. But he's left-handed, so they threw $8 million a year at him. It's like Vargas on the Mets. What's the point? They guaranteed the money. What's the incentive to improve? There is none.
Well, where's Jacoby Ellsbury these days?
He's on the DL.
Yeah, we know. Sure. For how long?
Do you think if they ever activate him, they can get rid of him with that salary? Yeah.
The Orioles signed Alex Cobb, who was supposed to be a pretty good pitcher.
Yes.
It was a $60 million contract. I think he's 1-6.
Oh, he looked terrible the other night.
1-7. He's 1-7 now.
There you go.
They got Blum the other night, and they got Chris Davis, the first baseman, who they're paying. They owe him $92 million. The guy's hitting $150 with no power, and a lot of people think that he was juicing before he signed the big contract.
Well, he looked good his first year with the Orioles.
Yeah, his fall off has been so
precipitous,
huge. Yeah. That the people think that this guy was juicing, and they got
could very well be
off the juice, and he can't do anything anymore.
The thing that troubles me about
may I get the conversation around your AP days? How Marty Rose is here, and as you know, Marty is one of your mentors' nephew. Murray Rose was a terrific sports writer. He was more of an Olympic writer, a boxing writer, and you knew him at the AP. You also knew Marty's dad, Jack, and you knew Marty a little bit at the AP.
Who did?
Hal, we may have done this before, but we can't do it enough. Murray would get us, Marty and I, these tickets to every sporting event in New York, every winter the Rangers, the Knicks, the roller derby. He really helped inspire the passion for sports in both of us, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to have you tell the audience a little bit about Murray Rose.
Well, Murray was a special guy. First of all, he spent his entire career at the Associated Press. He came there in the 30s, in the teeth of the Depression, as an office boy, and he wound up his career. I think he was the assistant sports editor at the end of his career. He was a legendary boxing writer. He would go, great story. He and Jack Hand, the other man was Jack Hand, who would He was a lead baseball writer at the time, but he also did a lot of boxing, a lot of pro football. And Murray and Jack would go to the fight together, the fights, whoever fought. And there were many, many big-name fighters and big-name fights in those days. And Murray would sit next to the teletype operator. Jack would sit next to Murray. Jack's job was to write the lead of the fight, the story of the fight. Murray's job was to dictate the round-by-round, the running of the fight. So he would sit next to a teletype operator whose name was Nick Zincone. And Zincone would sit there with his head down. He would never look at the fight. His head would be at the keyboard, and Murray's mouth would be in his ear because this was a loud environment, as you can imagine. And Murray would dictate the round by round, and it was a magnificent thing for me to watch because I occasionally would go to do a sidebar or, to just observe pretty much. And it was a magnificent scene to watch these two guys work together, Jack Hand and Murray Rose. And he was a legendary character. He was a terrific desk man, a terrific editor. I often worked nights, and he would be the night supervisor. And he would come to me and he would say to me, "I got to lean on you tonight, Bock." And I said, "Why? What's up?" He said, "I need 3 stories from you." And I was delighted to have the opportunity to write 3 major stories because that's what I wanted to do. That was my career. And he was just a sweetheart of a guy. You couldn't meet a nicer, warmer guy, but also a terrific professional at this job, at this crazy job that we choose to go through life doing. Murray was a special guy, and I think about him a lot.
Okay, Marty, you told me the other day, my mouth was open. When Murray retired, who were some of the people that came to his retirement party?
Well, I was shocked to see Don King there. I mean, I know Murray was big in boxing, but to see Don King there with his entourage, that was something. But of course, there was other guys. How about Pete Rozelle? Anybody remember him? Pete Rozelle was there. Some of the big writers in the city, Dick Young from the Post and the Daily News, Bill Gallo, the cartoonist, who presented Murray with a big caricature of himself. He had quite a few big names there.
Nice. Marty, do you think the Mets are jinxed? We've done this for 55 frickin' years rooting for this team, and Hal mentioned that, and it rang true to me.
What other explanation could there be? It's just the same thing every year, over and over again, especially since the Wilpons took over. I think, when was it Doubleday was their partner before they bought him out, I think. And when he was there, it seemed to me like things went a little smoother and they operated better. But since it's been just up to the Wilpons and that Katz, the other relative there, it's just been terrible. Nothing seems to go right. You mentioned the part about the new medical staff, and it's the same nonsense with the injuries. I was just thinking, just based on the last couple of days, of what we've seen from Sandy Alderson. I think it's time for him to hang it up. He made one good deal this year. That was getting rid of Harvey for this catcher, Miseraco, who's done very well since he came on board. But there's no farm system. I mean, they're talking.
They have no prospects
going out.
They have nobody in the system that is, major league ready, except for, they say, Dominic Smith. But we've seen his act, and he's down in the minors playing first base someplace.
There's another guy, Alonso, I think, Marty, who stepped ahead of Dominic Smith.
Peter Alonso is the first baseman at Binghamton, and he's tearing it up. He's hitting .333. He's got about 14 homers, doing really well. But they say his defense isn't that great. But he's not on the 40-man, so, he won't be coming up anytime soon. But what you mentioned before about David Wright, he's on the 60-day DL, so he doesn't count on the 40-man.
Well, he might as well be on the 6-year DL. I mean, what's the point of this?
Would you be good enough to grade Alderson as you see him?
His entire stay at the at the Citi Field, you mean?
Yeah, because this year, first of all, it's still young in the year, and I would have signed Vargas. I thought that was a good signing. He signed Bruce back. I thought that was a good signing. He has to
sign the relief pitcher.
Money out of. He's got to get some money out of the Wilpons.
First week of the season.
First
week of the season, he pulled a calf muscle, and he's been out ever since.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good.
Would I blame the GM for that?
C-.
How do you
C-.
C- overall?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
He got him
Jose
to the World Series.
Jose Reyes is done. I love the guy, sweetheart of a guy, but he's done. Why did we re-sign him? What is he doing here? He's batting about 140. And he's taking up time and place, time and space.
And if you think they're going to get anything out of Batista, you're nuts.
That's what I mean. He's done, finished, used up.
Yeah.
He's just Rosario.
He's a warm body. That's all he is.
Reyes has been the mentor for Rosario, but I think Rosario is good enough now to go on his own. I don't think he needs Reyes around anymore.
He's taken up a roster spot too,
True, yeah.
Now, Vargas had a bad second half with Kansas City last year.
Yeah, well, he won 18 games last year, but most of them in the first half. You're right.
Yeah.
And we got him for 2 years for $16 million. What are we going to do for the next year and a half? $16 million he's taken up.
Yeah.
So,
but again, can you blame Alderson for that, for him not working out? Because I remember being elated when they got him. I thought that solidified things. And it doesn't work out. No pitcher drafted number one in all the years of the draft since 1965. No number one draft choice has ever been in the Hall of Fame. Now, that shows you what a crapshoot the draft is, the way I look at it.
The pitchers are always a crapshoot.
Yeah. Especially
sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Bryce Harper was not a crapshoot. He's been a star ever since he signed.
I'm talking about pitchers.
Mike Trout is the same way.
I'm not talking about position players because I'm talking about pitchers.
Oh.
Yeah. I read an interesting stat. 24 teams passed on Mike Trout before.
Steven Strasburg certainly panned out as a prime.
There's always exceptions, but generally,
Yeah. What's discouraging today was Syndergaard going down. Does anybody know how long he's going to be out?
They hope they'll only miss one start. That's what I heard.
That's what they said. But
yeah, poor Jacob deGrom. He's pitching his heart out every single game, gives up 1 run, no runs, and every time they go out, the bullpen goes out and blows it for him.
22 times, Alan.
I can count 4 or 5 games that Familia has given away on Jacob deGrom.
Yeah.
So he brings in
the
other guy.
No, he should be 9-0.
I know, yeah.
And it cost him.
They bring in Lugo.
Cy Young votes.
They bring in Lugo yesterday. So he lets Lugo bat in the top of the ninth. Relief pitcher bat in the top of the ninth in that first game.
Yeah. Well, he had 17 consecutive scoreless innings prior to that eighth inning. So he had.
All right, this is off the subject a little bit, Hal, but this is right up your alley. Is there a way that an organized protest can be put down so that you guys who are retired and still with it can keep your Hall of Fame vote? You're retired, but you have not missed a beat, and you still write, and there's no way that taking away your vote helps objectivity in determining who goes into the Hall. I can't understand.
Well, I said to the Hall of Fame when they took away my vote, the board of directors made this decision that inactive writers, that is, writers who are retired like we are, should no longer be allowed to vote. And I said to the people at the Hall of Fame, I want you to know that I'm sure I watch more baseball games than most of the members of the board of directors because they're all stuffed shirts and starch collars and all of that stuff. And I'm not. And I sit here in front of my television almost on a nightly basis until I can't take it anymore. Sometimes I just can't. I can't subject. I'm not a young man. I don't want to subject myself to this aggravation. But I do watch a lot of baseball games because I love the game, and I don't love what they've done to the game or what they're doing to the game. But that's another matter for another day. But no, there's nothing that we can do. A lot of us have protested, we've complained, and we've been told, sorry, but that's the decision, and good luck to you, you know. What can I tell you?
Hal, who makes that decision? Is that the executive directors of the Hall of Fame? I mean, I don't know how that all works.
The board of directors, there's about 12 of them.
Okay.
And they meet on an annual basis and come up with these schemes that how to improve the Hall of Fame. I don't exactly think that they are, but that's just my opinion.
Are they the ones that change all the rules as far as the Veterans Committee and who's eligible and all that stuff?
They have changed. By the way, they have changed the rules for what was once the Veterans Committee. They made it the Golden Era Committee. They made it the Pre-Integration Committee or era. And I couldn't tell you who's eligible in any given year. Some people are eligible. Some people are not eligible. How they come up with this, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But it's really unfortunate. They had, as I've often said, they had a good system. Why couldn't they just leave it alone? What was wrong with it?
You're talking to the choir. You're preaching to the choir with me because and I've said before. I said, leave the damn game alone. You know, they keep tinkering with it and they come up with all these things, and now they're doing the same thing with the Hall of Fame. I mean, to me, the Hall of Fame was a shrine. I mean, now it's politics and who gets in and whose buddy is who, and how they change the committees and the pre-integration and golden age and all that stuff. I mean, leave the doggone thing alone. Whatever they did before, just leave it alone.
I agree.
And bring Minnie Minoso and Buck O'Neill.
Yeah, I just put that down today again.
And Gil Hodges, bring him in.
Buck O'Neill.
And Gil
Hodges, of course, absolutely. And just bring him in, for crying out loud. It's a museum. It's not heaven. You bring guys in, honor them.
I was on a site a while back. And the site they put up every time a Hall of Fame player has a birthday. They put up this Cardinal pitcher from the 20s named Jesse Haynes. And I said the only way this guy should be in the Hall of Fame is by buying a ticket. And I got a message back. It says we only want positive stuff on this. So.
Well, we started this conversation really talking about the Mets, and now we're talking about Gil Hodges. I mean, to me, to not have Gil Hodges in the Hall of Fame, either as a player, manager, both, whatever. I mean, it's ludicrous to me that he's not in there. and you have all these other guys that are going in, and here's a tremendous player, a tremendous manager, brought the Mets their World Series in '69, and he gets bypassed every year for whatever reason. I can't fathom it.
Well, this is where I have to disagree with Hal a little bit, talking about the ballpark, Citi Field. You know, Hal, I'm as big a Giant fan as you were, almost. And I love the Polo Grounds. But they made this Ebbets Field, and what irked me was not that they duplicated Ebbets Field, it's that they didn't honor with a statue Gil Hodges and Tom Seaver. They chose to honor Jackie, who had nothing to do with the Mets' history. Honor Jackie on every street in Brooklyn, in every, anywhere you want to honor him. He deserves to be honored, but he doesn't deserve to be honored in front of a Mets ballpark. In lieu of Hodges and Seaver and
I agree 100%. When they opened Citi Field, they neglected to put a Hall of Fame in there. And why would you do that? Why would you dismiss your history? When they opened Citi Field, they had won the World Series in 1969. They had won the World Series in 1986. They had players on those teams who were worthy of being celebrated in a Hall of Fame. And somebody told them, hey, what about a Hall of Fame? And they finally got around to it in their second or third year. They put a Hall of Fame in Citi Field. But you're right. You're 100% right. We don't disagree at all. And I wrote a column about this when they first announced the plans for Citi Field and this rotunda, which is copied right out of Ebbets Field. And I wrote and I said, when the Mets were invented, they were orange and blue. The orange was for the Giants. The blue was for the Dodgers. They were supposed to attract fans of both those teams, and they would come together, kumbaya, we love each other, and the Mets will be our team. And that's fine if that's what they wanted to do, and hopefully that would have happened that way. But when they built the ballpark, when they built Citi Field, there was no homage paid whatsoever to the Polo Grounds, which was their ancestral home, the Giants' ancestral home. And the Giants are an afterthought. However, the one thing that keeps me attached, and maybe I need my head examined, I don't know, but the one thing that keeps me attached is the insignia that they wear on their caps. The logo, the NY logo, is the same logo that the Giants, when they played in New York, wore. And every time I see that logo, it brings back great memories for me of times that I spent in the Polo Grounds with my dad rooting for the Giants. So that's the one, to me, that and the orange of their logo and their uniform, that brings me back to the Giants of my childhood. But you're right. There's no, they just don't think. They don't think. They don't think straight.
What's interesting, Hal, if you've ever been to AT&T Park in San Francisco, not only is it a gem, but they honor the New York Giants in an incredible display inside the park. Much more so, I think, than the Mets honoring the Giants, or the Mets honoring themselves. So it's interesting. Wilpon built a beautiful stadium. I'll give them that, a beautiful park. That it doesn't irk me that it's in a Dodger image. As I say, the only thing that really irks me is the statues. And you're right, George.
Yeah, I mean, every stadium has a number 42 up there for Jackie Robinson, and one day a year, April 15th, they all wear number 42 on the players' uniforms. The statues, to me, I agree, is superfluous. That doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
There's a highway here used to be called the Brooklyn Queens, the Interborough. The Interborough. It's a park.
Oh, that's a different one.
Yeah, just goes between Brooklyn and Queens. It doesn't go into Manhattan or anything. And that was named the Jackie Robinson Parkway. And when they do the traffic reports here, they refer to it as the Jackie Robinson Parkway.
You know, of course, that the West Side Highway was named the Joe DiMaggio Highway, but it's never used. They never used Joe DiMaggio Highway. And you know, of course, that the Triborough Bridge was named after Robert Kennedy.
Right.
Never say Robert Kennedy.
They got the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, the Hugh Carey Tunnel, and something is the Edward R. Koch Bridge, and the new Tappan Z is Mario Cuomo. Nobody used those. The politicians' names. Nobody used them.
No, well, forever and ever, we say 6th Avenue. New Yorkers say 6th Avenue. Nobody calls it the Avenue of the Americas.
Yeah.
Who calls it the Avenue of the, even though all the signage is Avenue of the Americas, but nobody calls it that.
Nobody calls that, no.
No.
Well, we got a team playing at Yankee Stadium this week. They're world champions, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And they're the Houston Astros. But in Manhattan, that street is called Houston Street.
Houston. Right.
Yeah.
Right? So,
I could never understand how the entire country mispronounces it.
There you go.
Especially in Texas. Well, there you expect it, you know.
Yeah,
Texas.
you expect mispronunciation.
But I'll tell you what irks me about the Houston Astros, aside from the fact that they're very, very good, is whoever came up with this ridiculous abbreviation of the Stros. It's one letter off a 5-letter team name. I mean, nobody ever calls the Red Sox Ed Sox. I mean, what in the world ever possessed somebody to designate the Astros as the Stros and to keep it going? I don't think so. You think?
Huh?
I don't know. He'd still have to put an apostrophe in there before the A to replace the A. So it
but the apostrophe takes up no space.
Well,
at least it didn't when I was doing makeup.
yeah. Well, maybe half a unit.
Yeah, Stroh's is a beer in the Midwest.
Well, yeah, but it's not spelled that way.
I know, it's Stroh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no other team in baseball has a name. I mean, there are nicknames of the nickname, because that's what the nicknames are, really, like Yankees, any of those teams. Those are their
A's.
nicknames.
Yeah, they cut the whole athletic shit.
Right. But A's, that goes way, way back.
I know, yeah.
Well, you guys are all old. Explain this to me. I remember as a kid, the Brooklyn Dodgers in headlines often were called the Flock.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
That was the Bird.
When he was managing the old Dodgers.
They were called the Robins when Wilbur Robinson was managing them.
Yeah, he was a manager.
Yeah.
So it was his flock.
I heard the Flock. I just learned something.
Yeah, it was his flock.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an old, I mean, it eventually died out, but I do remember in the 50s that they were referred to as the flock, depending on the headline, writer, what it could use.
David and I were the only ones who...
The Bums, was it from the
figured that out, yeah.
Gallo cartoon?
No,
it was the Mullen cartoon.
Willard Mullen, yes, of course.
Right. How do I
They
know
had the
that?
bum on the yearbooks. I have the last 7 Brooklyn Dodger yearbooks. They all have the bum on the...
Hal's book.
Yeah.
Hal's
That's right.
Give credit to where it's due. Hal's great book about Willard Mullen.
You,
I have that, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So why do I always say Bill Gallo? He was a cartoonist too, right?
Oh,
he's
a great cartoonist, and he drew the bum too, but not.
Yeah, he succeeded.
The bum was Willard Mullen.
Yeah, he succeeded Mullen. Yeah, basically.
Well, Mullen was with the World Telegram and Sun.
Yeah.
Bill Gallo was with the Daily.
I mean, in fame and
notoriety. I never thought of him as technically a really good cartoonist. I mean, the characterizations were never as true or as humorous as Mullen's cartoons.
No, his big creation was Basement Bertha.
Yeah, which sort of was kind of silly.
Von Steingraber for Steinbrenner.
Yeah.
Mullen was a craftsman. Mullen.
Oh yes.
Al, would you tell us something about Mullen as a person that we may not know?
As a person, he had a whimsical sense of humor. He was a prankster. He liked to kid around. He was a brilliant cartoonist. I mean, there's no question about that. And he covered mostly baseball, but he covered all sports, the entire spectrum. And he would sit home in Manhasset, which is not far from where I live, and he had a studio there, and he would draw his cartoon maybe 5 o'clock at night, and he would rush to the Long Island Railroad and give the cartoon to the conductor with a $5 bill. Please deliver this to Penn Station. And the World Telegram would send a copy boy, and occasionally it was me, to the railroad to grab the cartoon and bring it back to the office so it could go to the engravers and into the paper the next day. He was a brilliant artist. He was beloved by many of the other cartoonists, sports cartoonists of his time, and they called him the greatest cartoonist of the first half century in America, greatest sports cartoonist. So
how did it come to be that you wrote a book with him?
Not with him, about him.
About him.
I felt strongly that his cartoons should be collected and not be lost to eternity. And I contacted the estate, the Willard Mullen estate, and the lawyer of that estate. And together, he collected a bunch of cartoons. How he got them all, I don't know, but he got them. And I wrote the narrative, and the book is called the Willard Mullen's Golden Age of Baseball Cartoons.
Yeah, I have that, yeah. I do have it, yeah.
And it's a collection of Mullen's cartoons accompanied by a narrative by yours truly. And I did it because I wanted to celebrate this great cartoonist. I didn't want his work lost to the current generation. Now, the current generation, I don't know if they pay much attention, but it's out there. The book is out there and probably still available from Amazon, although it's pretty old by now. But I had a great time writing that book because I just loved Mullen and his work, and I wanted it to be shared with the new generation.
That was the first thing I looked at. When I opened the World Telegram and Sun every night, that was the first thing I looked at was the Willard Mullen cartoon. Right there.
A lot of people did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people did.
Yes. Was he there in the World War II era? When did he start? Do you have that?
He started. He came out of Los Angeles. He grew up in Los Angeles, and he came to New York in the 20s.
Okay.
He worked in New York through the 70s, so he had a half a century in New York.
Right.
Well, very interesting that people migrated west to east.
Those days, yeah, they did.
Yeah. You don't hear that as much as people going from east to west. But so it was.
The only baseball team that did that was the Browns from St. Louis to Baltimore.
Right.
Yes, not far east, by the way. Thank you, gentlemen. This was a great show. Appreciate it. Marty Rose, not on this show very often, but can be heard on New York Mets, past, present, and future, on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Alan Blumkin is a jack of all trades. You do a show with David Finoli on Pittsburgh sports.
Tyko, yeah. And probably have one more on Cleveland next week.
Cleveland with David Nedick?
Yeah, my friend Al comes back from a cruise on Saturday, so I just spoke to David tonight, and that's why we're not doing one this week.
Beautiful. You'll be back next week then?
Probably, yeah.
George Case, son of George Case III, son of George Case Jr., the fastest man in baseball in the 30s, does a show, In Case You're Wondering, with George Case on this very network. David Hubler, Michael Pomerantz, and myself, Michael Preminger, of course. David, the three of us do Bronx Roots. My grandparents were from the Bronx, and I have roots back there, and we talk about the old days on Sundays. Alan does, as he's the third baseball Meshuggah with Peter Golenbach and I on Sundays. So we've got a crew of folks on this show that make up a good portion of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm proud that I brought all you guys together. That's all I can say. I have an all-star team of terrific humans, to say nothing about baseball mavens, historians, communicators. You guys are great. Thank you. We'll do this next week again.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you for the kind words there, Ralph, and we all enjoy it, and talk to you all later. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Guys,
Good night, everybody.
Guys, to quote my favorite... Okay, I'll hang up. Bye-bye.
No, I'm here. Al.
Yeah. To quote my favorite philosopher, Lawrence Peter Barrett, you can observe a lot by watching.
Yes. And you observe a lot, Al.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Okay.
Be well, and
okay, you too.
We'll be back next week, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Is there anything Friday with Hutmaker or no? Okay.